Does God exist? Stay tuned.
Let's go!
After looking at the complex things that are created around us, we'll look at that and we'll understand that it is based on the specific wisdom in the creation. The mountains, the skies, and the different things, the genes and the genomes and everything was created around us, or everything that is existing around us is leading us to understand that the God exists. That's why the Noble Quran is leading us to understand that the God exists through the existence of the other things. When you look at the mountains, the sky, the human being himself. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ. We will show them our signs on the horizons and within themselves until it becomes clear to them that it is the truth. The truth of the complexities of the different things around us and the creation is leading us to understand that there is a wisdom behind the creation of everything. And that wisdom doesn't come out of nature or chaos. And that is one of the evidence about the existence of God. As long as all of those things around us exist, so God exists. The creator of all of those things exists. Why do we start with the existence of God first as one of the attributes? Actually, that is the fundamental of the principle. That is actually the beginning and the basis that we build on it the qualities of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we say that God doesn't exist, so all of the other qualities of perfection of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala are prevented automatically. Why? Because you cannot find that there is a God to call him knowledgeable. There is no God to call him the all-hearing or the all-seeing. All of those things are leading you to prove that God exists first, and then after that you'll move on to the other qualities of perfection that this God has. We say God is existent, but it is better according to the Aqidah to say that He is wajib al-wujud, obligatory to be existent. Because everything around you is understanding that there is a God, that God is a specific necessity to be existent. You can find the creation that is all the time shouting and yelling at you to tell you there is a God behind me creating me. Allah said in the Noble Quran, وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. And within yourselves, don't you see, look at the signs of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala that He put in this life. And that is actually the benefit of the tadabbur and the tafakkur, the reflection on the different things. That's why it is a specific element and a specific factor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave in the Noble Quran in most of the verses of the Noble Quran. Actually, the Noble Quran is a conversation to the human beings all the time, telling you to look at the sky, to look at the heaven, to look at the earth, to look at the plants, to look at the grass, to look at the different things, look at the creation, and so on. A lot of people are building on that the misconception. Does the God need that? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need everything. Allah has the free need. But He leads you to understand it is a benefit to you, not a benefit to the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to differentiate between the benefit that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has and the benefit that you need. So all of those things are yelling at you to tell you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a necessity for the human being and for the creators. Because it is impossible to add all of those creators to the nature or chaos. If you remember in the previous episodes, I mentioned with you ḥukm ḥaqlī, the rational, the intellectual ruling. And I told you there is a wajib, obligatory, or a necessary, and jaiz, the permissible or possible, and mustahil, what is impossible. The possible and the impossible and the obligatory to be found. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the highest level, which is the obligation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is necessary for the human beings to be existent. Because the creation of everything around us and its activity is dependent on the God subhanahu wa ta'ala that is creating or inventing and proportioning and preparing it on a specific way to produce in this life and to give and offer something else later on. Meaning, for a certain mission. The creation of the world is possible, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the ability to create this world or not. It is something up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create it. By the choice of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, He chose to create this world, to create that universe, to create everything around us, even though the human beings, the mankind itself, is based on the creation of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is up to Allah to create them or not. So we have to find an influencer that influencer influences in that world, in the universe, because actually you cannot find the nature creating itself by itself. It is impossible by the mentality and by the mindset. We have to find a greater power creating it, and that greater power is the God. The God is Allah. But you can ask the question, the God is existing, and the human beings are existing, and the animals are existing, and the plants are existing, and everything around us, around the creatures are existing. So what is the difference between the existence of God and the existence of the creature? Actually, we are in common in the word only, existence. But there is a difference between the existence of God and the existence of the mankind and the existence of the angels as well. That's why you'll find the highest existence, the highest level of existence is the sacred existence, which is related to the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't need anyone to create him. He is the creator, not the creature. That's why you'll find the existence of God is the highest level of existence, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't depend on a specific thing to be existent. We have blood. Without the blood, we are not existent. But Allah doesn't have. We need the heart. We need the limbs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in our bodies. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the life, and that life doesn't depend on anything, because if we say that it depends on something, so Allah needs that thing. If we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a heart, so it means Allah needs a heart, and that is impossible to be added with the sacredness and the divinity of this God. So the existence of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala is different from the existence of the human beings. We are just in common in the word, in the vocabulary. The core difference between the existence of God and the existence of creatures is dependent on the other thing that influences in the creation. Meaning, Allah doesn't have that. Allah doesn't have anyone to create him, and that is something actually impossible with the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, so we need God to create us, to give us the existence, to offer it to us out of his power, will, and knowledge. But the God subhanahu wa ta'ala is different from that. Allah doesn't need any other one to create him. So for God, there is no influencer on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he'll be greater than the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he has the benefit to give it to the deity. But for us, we need an influencer to create us in that universe. And that influencer is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created and invented and proportioned us. And the meaning and the necessity of the existence of the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala means that it is not possible with the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala to add to him the nothingness. He doesn't accept the nothingness in the past, the present, or the future.